balance of our emotions, mind, body, and spirit. This podcast is dedicated to individuals who are on a quest to uncover their truth, understanding their genetic and spiritual DNA, learning how to harness this knowledge to achieve optimal health. But this isn't just another health podcast. Natural Podcast is here to ignite a spark of hope within you, reminding you of your inner potential for greatness, your pure love, capable of living life to its fullest expression. Are you ready to embark on a transformational journey to achieve optimal health? On today's podcast, we have Reed Davis, double board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist who is a globally recognized expert in functional lab testing, holistic lifestyle medicine. As the visionary founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, Reed has pioneered the FDN certification course, which has empowered over 4,000 practitioners across 50 countries to take charge of their clients' health. With more than a decade of experience as a health director at the Southern Californian Wellness Center, Reed has personally guided over 10,000 clients to optimal wellness, making him one of the most sought after clinicians in his field. He lives in the US, and when he's not teaching a course and helping his graduates, he is usually found gardening or riding his motorcycle. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast.
Mahela, it's fantastic to be here. Thank you.
You're most welcome. So, have we been on any motorcycling trips lately?
Well, it's winter here in California, which is nothing to complain about. But no, I ride a little less in the winter, mostly in the spring, summer, fall. So
Nice,
not late.
amazing. Yeah, that's fair. And what has been one of your favorite trips on your bike? Do you do like overnight ones? Do you just do day trips?
Well, every year I go to Sturgis, South Dakota. That's the largest motorcycle rally in the world.
Wow.
And I usually go there with my son, who also rides. We've been doing that for quite a number of years, and it's a fantastic thing to do. Pretty sure we're going to go again this year.
Yeah,
But also my
amazing.
wife and I like to ride. We do Sunday cruising up in the mountains. I live in the hills east of San Diego, so we have lots of beautiful riding, mountain riding, desert riding, and so she and I will take off on a given day and ride around for a few hours.
Yeah, it sounds like a dream. Sounds magical, especially where you live. You would have the right roads for the bikes to get that experience, I'm guessing.
It's a biker's haven,
Yeah.
and I know every road within 100 miles. Just it's really pleasant. Yeah, it's a good way to
Yeah.
get out and just feel the freedom of the road, of course.
Yeah, you have to make your way to Australia. I live near the Great Ocean Road, and people who have bikes absolutely love that road there.
Yeah, I bet. Well, one day. Australia.
Amazing. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. I mean, just introducing you, you've changed so many individuals' lives, not only clients, but also students. Tell me a little bit about what has led you where you are today and what your story is so we can get to know you a little bit more.
Well, along the theme of freedom and motorcycle riding, I, for years, was in the environmental field, saving the whole planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees, and you see enough dead fish and dead birds, and you start wondering about people. So in the
Hmm.
late '90s, I just changed. I stopped all that and just went to work in a clinic where I could work with people, and I had some amazing opportunities there to get trained and learn how to do functional lab work. And I became a nutritionist and a professional fitness trainer and all these things. But it was the lab work that led to me changing lives. And, um, it was just amazing. I really had never been to the doctor other than for some sports injuries and motorcycle spills and things. So I didn't know what it was like going to the regular doctor. And at this clinic where I worked, everybody coming in had already seen 6 or 8 practitioners and weren't well yet. Now that's, to me, it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. They spent all this time and money and weren't better yet. So I thought, that's a ripoff, and I don't want to be one. So what can I do that's different? And the lab work became the tool. I became an expert running labs. I worked there 10 years,
Wow.
Mahela, and I ran labs on thousands of people. And I got to make,
Yeah.
I had great mentorship from lab scientists and doctors and people in the field who were all doing alternative medicine of the day. And but I also made my own observations because I was just so darn busy. Really good at running the practice and having lots of customers and people coming through. There's doctors there, but I kind of ran the show and got to do what I wanted. And I made all these observations of my own and became a pattern, and finally became a methodology. And now it's a course that people can take how to do this kind of work, functional lab work. And I'll point out that only as it applies to all natural drug-free solutions.
Yeah, I love that your drive for wanting to assist people drove you for this. It's like you've seen people, like you said, see 5 or 6 practitioners and spend all this money and still not get better. And I think your brain ticked and was like, wow, how can we make this, cost effective, individualized, so these individuals can get to the bottom of it in a quicker way and then they can suffer less, I'm guessing.
Suffer a lot less or not at all. And the
Yeah.
trick was that I remember there was doctors at this clinic, and so they used to laugh at me and say, hey, we get to just diagnose and write a prescription. You read, you're going to have to figure out what's really wrong with them and help them, teach them how to fix it. So that was the challenge, and that was fine with me. I wasn't a physician. I had a lot to learn, but
Yeah.
apparently I had nothing to unlearn. It was just raw canvas, and just what's really wrong with the person became the test. It's like being a health detective. You've heard that term, I'm sure, but in the day, this is really what we did. We ran labs and made correlations with that individual, and then uh, I'll say again, I couldn't get out a prescription pad. So what's the answer? Well, you have to change. You have to live yourself out of the same problems you've lived yourself into.
Yeah, I
And
feel like
so
it
it
was a
was,
benefit that you couldn't prescribe and you couldn't diagnose. I feel like that was kind of like your superpower instead of a downfall in that instance.
well, that's very observant and the truth, that it was a beautiful thing. Like that was the good news is that you're actually going to have to figure out how to what's really wrong, what's out of whack, what's not working right, and teach them to fix it. So in the office, and this is over 20 years ago, uh, I would ask people, hey, Mrs. Smith, I'd say you're coming in the office 3 times a week for modalities and different tricks and things like. What are you doing at home? That's what matters. It's not coming in the office. It's what are you doing at home? And well, what do you mean? Well, so over the years developed a lifestyle, almost a medicinal lifestyle program so that they could, again, live themselves out of what was mostly lifestyle based chronic downward spiraling and stress related conditions.
Yeah, and that early on, Reed, what patterns did you seem to notice? Like, what was something that just went wow or aha? Like, what pattern
Hmm.
did you see?
I have a great answer for that. But it didn't happen overnight. So,
Yes.
so I started initially because most of the patients coming in the office were women. So I got really good at hormone testing, like getting the hormones balanced, hormone balancing. And this was 25 years ago when most women were still using synthetic hormone replacement, the Premarin and progestin and just all this stuff that nowadays is considered kind of taboo, like the horse urine type medicine. It just really. So anyway, so women were getting off that, but they didn't know what to do. So we ran our labs and I worked on hormones, and those women would get better to some degree. They got better to the degree that hormones were part of the problem. So if hormones were the only problem, oh, that's fixed, miracle. But if it was only part of the problem, well, what's the rest of the problem? And I started observing through just really sheer volume of lab work. I did more than any 5 practitioners put together, is what the labs were telling me. Like, I was their busiest guy. And I noticed how the dominoes were falling in each downward spiral. The hormones. Well, then there's the immune system, and there's digestion, and there's detoxification. These things can all be tested. As a matter of fact, nowadays it's quite simple. It was a little harder back then, but people can do at-home based self-testing and get all the answers they need. And that, your question, what patterns did I recognize? HIDDEN spells hidden, and it's hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system balance. So those 6 things, you can test for more. There's oxidative stress and lots of things. And I'm kind of well versed in those things from experience, working with real people. But the HIDDEN became the pattern. Now, men, women, doesn't really matter. We just do HIDDEN. That's our primary investigation. And then there's the lifestyle, of course, which is another acronym. But that's the answer to your question. It's a very sort of easy pattern. And you can teach people to do it for themselves. Remember, I wanted them to go home and just behave. So, and I learned to gather the data that would give them what they'd be monitoring and what correlated very highly with their symptoms, their complaints, and they all, everyone who does it pretty much gets better. You just follow the data and the proven system of recovery.
I like that, the proven system of recovery. And it's so interesting that you say it's so simple, the hidden method, but just in itself, hormones are so complicated and so much depth. The immune system is so complicated, there's so much depth. Detox, environmental, you name it, the nervous system. There's so much there happening. But at the same time, like you said, if there is a method, and if it's done before, and like you said, over so many years experience and you've seen these patterns, there are ways that you can test this to see if your body is detoxing at an optimal level, if your immune system is activated or reacting to something, if there's a hormone imbalance. And I like that you said at the start, with women, yes, if the hormones were the issue, everything else would have been fixed. But for some reason, that woman is still sitting in front of you and they're still having some issues. So it's like, okay, well, there must be some other stuff happening there.
Yeah, that's what kept me busy for 10 years, figuring out the rest of the story. And a good example of how that works, if you solve for a problem, and that might be where the problem lies in what we call Western medicine, is they hear the symptoms and they go, oh, that must be this. God forbid they find that test actually correlates, because they'll say, I found your problem. And it's really, there's so much more. That's only part of the problem. It's never 100% of the problem. And that's why our methodology includes a bigger intake. Like we run 5 labs. Why? Well, because whatever we find on one, we need to know how it's interacting with the other causal factors. It's why believe it or not, I dropped the word root cause. Root cause medicine is very popular. It's sort of part of functional medicine. But I dropped that phrase years ago in favor of another one. I call it metabolic chaos.
Okay.
So what's really going on with Mrs. Smith, who's got all these symptoms, is it's the hormones, the immune system, digestion, detoxification. So there's this constellation of healing opportunities that can be identified with the right lab work. And I wish there was more lab work. And we've actually developed some labs. Now, I've worked with lab companies to tell them what I wanted to see that would give us leverage, that we could capitalize on that data if you have time. This is not for people who are dying. for people, well, they're dying but slowly.
I was going to say,
So,
we're all dying, aren't we?
well, we don't like to say that, but what I mean is, if the downward spiral is really contracted, there's no time to capitalize on the observations that I or one of my graduates would want to measure. So we're looking for healing opportunities. What can be fixed? What needs fixing? What the person could actually pretty much do for themselves if they eat right, go to bed on time, and exercise, and reduce all the stressors, and take their supplements and things like that.
Yeah, I love that you named it healing opportunities. That is so beautiful because in any of those aspects, digestion, detox, immune system, energy, so forth, there's always healing opportunities. And you just have to identify them and go in there and have a plan.
Well, that's very astute because that's what they are to us. We don't diagnose or treat medical conditions. That's for doctors. You go ahead and do that all you want. The people coming in my office 25 years ago didn't want another diagnosis. They wanted to know, do you know what's wrong with me? And just to label it and prescribe some agent to maybe change the numbers on the paper wasn't what they were looking for. And so, like you said before, it's a good thing I didn't know how to do that. I had to identify the healing opportunities. The hormones are out of balance. The immune system's overactive or underactive. The digestive system really isn't, breaking down and absorbing nutrition properly, or the detoxification systems are congested, and so those are the healing opportunities. There's no diagnosis in that. Well, here's what's broken. Let's fix it.
Yeah. So I guess you're kind of creating hope for individuals who have chronic illnesses, who are just like, I don't know what's going on anymore. I've done this test, that test, and they've just kind of lost hope in a way. And, coming to you or one of your graduates, it's kind of like, wow, let's run these tests and let's actually see where the issue may lay. A few issues may lay, not just one, and kind of move forward from there. Reed, what you said, you run 5 tests. Are you able to share with us what those tests are?
Absolutely. So we would test. I mentioned the pattern we're looking for: hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification. So that requires collecting some urine, stool, blood, and of course saliva. And so we're looking at things that come out of your body that tell us what's going on inside the body. And it is a lot of biology and anatomy and physiology, really looking at the systems that are breaking down. Again, healing opportunities within the HIDDEN. And so saliva testing for the hormones, for instance, we'd look at your catabolic versus anabolic balance. And if you're catabolic, your cortisol is higher than your DHEA. So your catabolic hormones are high relative to your anabolic hormones. So, and those need to be in balance. Those are the two major categories of metabolism. If I say metabolism, people will give you a textbook definition. Oh, that's the sum total of all the metabolic processes in your body. No, there's catabolism, catabolic. Your body's breaking down while it's building up at the same time. And if that's in balance, we call it homeostasis, and that's a good thing. Then from there, so when you get into the high stress and catabolic, whether it be mental emotional stress or physical aches and pains or diseases or something, lots of food sensitivities and chemicals in the environment, so we get catabolic. Well, the next thing to go would be those sex hormones. So when I mentioned hormone testing initially, everyone would think, oh, it's testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. No, you measure the catabolic versus anabolic first. Now you can sort of gauge the next domino to fall, and it is the sex hormones. Then you have to, well, what's after that? The immune system, because the high cortisol from stress affects the secretory IgA, which is the next measurement. That's the lining of your gut. And so that goes down. It becomes deficient. So what
Mm.
happens? You get a dysbiosis. Now you're in a bad, good to bad flora ratio. And so all the dominoes will fall if you don't reverse it. Um, and it's amazing the fallout. So that's why I say we just call it metabolic chaos. There's no one root cause. And all the root causes that you can find, they're interacting with each other in ways that can't even be measured. And that's coming from a guy who teaches a course in lab work. There just isn't enough lab work to measure everything.
Mm.
So that's why you need a very sort of a unifying approach. It's a simplifying and unifying approach. HIDDEN, run the labs, you see what's going on, the healing opportunities, and then you can, and most people identify immediately, wow, no one ever explained it like this to me before. They just said, here, take your pills. Or worse, I bet you have listeners who were told nothing was wrong with them. Your blood work looks normal, but they know something's wrong. So they go on this endless cycle of trial and error with every kind of supplement or program or therapy or standing on your head in the corner with carrots in your nose. I don't know, just every kind of thing. Where no, you can't trial and error. You've got to have a system of investigation of these healing, and that's what works. So as we after 10 years started outperforming every other system, that's when I was asked to start teaching.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I like how you explained it, the breakdown and so forth. So we've got the saliva test for hormones, and then we've got, is it a stool test that we're doing for the immune system in the
Next one
gut?
in that order, that progression that I mentioned, the next domino to fall really is the immune system, which you can
Yeah.
use a simple urine test to see if they have the dysbiosis. By the way, you can also look at your liver function for detox. You can also look at
Mm.
oxidative stress, and you find out interesting things about a person, and you're finding out again the healing opportunity. What's really wrong or out of balance, and some of it might look just fine, but you start to, if you do that, then you would run a finger stick blood test. So I say finger stick. I point that out because it means you could do that test at home also. So saliva and urine, easy to collect at home. Um, Finger stick blood for mucosal barrier. So you're going now deeper into the gut, not just the secretory IgA, the lining, which is very, resistant to all the bad things that might come down the pipes. Now it gets worse from there because with the dysbiosis, the imbalance of the bacteria, well, you're going to get bigger, badder bugs. That's the medical phrase. Bigger, badder bugs. And and now you got infestation and overgrowth and biofilms. And anyway, I don't want to get too into the weeds there on the anatomy, physiology, bio. It's really interesting. It's fascinating when you're in the mood for it.
Mm, mm, mm. I love that. So
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
so
So that's so we've done saliva, urine, finger stick, blood, and stool is really important because you can look at the entire microbiome. You can
yeah,
find out and identify the bigger, badder bugs, and the imbalances even among the good flora and things like that. And there's some functional markers from some of the stool testing that would tell us more. And then we always do a food sensitivity test. Every single person who's ill or downward spiraling, stress related type of chronic conditions has some food sensitivities. Because when your gut goes dysfunctional, dysbiosis and worse, you end up sensitive to more things. Some are
yeah, isn't that
inborn,
interesting?
but a lot of it is just because that's just how it works.
Yeah, and there's always someone that comes in, and most people, oh, I'm sensitive to bananas all of a sudden. I'm sensitive to capsicum. I'm sensitive to this, and it's like, okay, well, capsicum and bananas aren't the issue and cause of your of your disease. And these are just follow-on effects, like you said.
Yeah, they're actually, at that point, they become obstacles to healing. So you can't heal as well if you keep eating this stuff that's part of the problem. You don't need to know if the chicken came first or the egg came first. Like you just, you have food sensitivity, so you got to quit
Yeah.
eating. You got to quit eating that stuff, and for a while at least. Often we can reintroduce some of those foods once you've healed, especially the gut, your whole digestive system. Yeah, so you'd be amazed what people are sensitive to. And here's the point I wanted to make earlier. Reed, should I run a food sensitivity test? Yes. If among all these other things, good idea. But to what degree is that food sensitivity test going to help? To the degree that the foods you're eating that are wrong are contributing to the metabolic chaos. So I've had a lady once, and she couldn't hold down a job. She was in a dark room with a pillow over her head 5 days a week. Can't work. Couldn't afford my lab test. I'm kidding. I just ran this one food sensitivity test. It's all I could get her to do. She couldn't muster any other all the other tests I would have done, and found out she was very sensitive to some things. Came up. Don't eat that. So within 3 weeks, she never had another migraine. She'd been in a dark room with a pillow over her head 5 days a week. Foods were the major triggers for her migraines. We even narrowed it down to which one of the list of foods. So we test for 170 different foods. Say 8 were bad for her.
Mm.
Get off them all. And then eventually you can start reintroducing and see which one or 2 were the real triggers. Because it's just how the testing works. And so for her, identifying those triggers was a miracle and changed her life. Now, other people have run that test, maybe with migraines. And by the way, I've had the same thing happen with skin conditions and asthma and joint pain and lots of things. Get off the foods, but only to the degree that those foods were contributing. Were they 100% of the causal factor, or were they only 50%? So you'd get half better. So you see what I'm saying? So it's really important to understand how complex it is, but yet we have a system that simplifies the process of finding out. It's truly a good form of detective work, step by step in every person.
Yeah. And wow, what a change it would have had for this lady that was, in a dark room with a pillow over her head, not being able to function, and then removed these foods and was able to function. Like, that is a game changer from just that one test for her in particular.
Big giant game changer for her. I had another lady coming in the office, and she was doing better working with us. We had chiropractic and my work and some other things. And she asked me if I worked with children. I said, yeah, sure. Why? What? She goes, well, they're trying to send my child home from school if I won't put him on medication. And at the time, this is over 20 years ago, they wanted to put him on Ritalin, and that was the drug of choice for ADD. And so I asked her jokingly, do you think he has a Ritalin deficiency? And she didn't laugh and didn't think it was very funny at all, and kind of got mad and said, no, I don't want to put my son on meds. Can you help him or not? And I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can help him, but we can run some tests, and maybe we can. Sure enough, I'll just skip to the good part. Found some things, of course, changed the young man's. By the way, this kid was 9, and they wanted to send him home from school on a class 2, or you either take him home or you put him on a class 2 narcotic. That's the same class as cocaine. That's what Ritalin is. It's a class 2 narcotic. Yeah, I'm going to put my 9-year-old on that, right? So no way. So anyway, I got a call from the principal of the school, the same man who was threatening to kick the kid out. Hey, this Mr. Davis, this kid is different. He's paying attention. He's not poking the other kids. He's not outbursting inappropriately or any of these things. As a matter of fact, he's kind of a model student. And of course, the chills still run up my spine when I hear that because yay, we helped this kid. But then he said, "What'd you put him on?" Which burst the bubble because it's not something in a jar. It's not. He wasn't lacking one nutrient well, it was. We put him on a better diet, better bedtime, better exercise schedule, better homework discipline, and we really sort of did a lot of work there. But in a very short period of time, it completely turned him around. So that's the power of the working with the kind of labs we run.
Yeah,
They're called functional labs now.
that is mind blowing. I love that example that you used because, individuals who are listening probably know someone who's been through a similar story. Maybe not getting kicked out of school, but just, in and out, talking at teachers' interviews. Your child is a nuisance. Your child talks a lot. Your child does this. And just as a parent hearing that, it's frustrating because you want to help your child. But then I guess the answer is putting them on those medications or not putting them on the medications and dealing with a child like that. But what we want to put out there is there are different options and there are different pathways that these parents can take and these children. And even now, a lot of individuals are being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD later in life, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. And it's like there are options out there. There is something metabolically happening in your body that's not making it be in homeostasis, and we can kind of have to figure out what that is.
Yes, it could be worse than that too. Just not just out of homeostasis, but there are things that are going to affect your nervous system, your neurotransmitters. There's irritants that work directly on the nervous system and other functions in the body. So they're we call it neurotoxicity. And it doesn't have to be food. It could be a number of things in the environment. So this is a helpful hint, I think. We ask people just go check out it's ewg.org, Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, and you can look at the foods that are known to be toxic and have extra chemicals in them and things like that. They call it the dirty dozen. And it changes each year because of the way commercial farms work, so the dirty dozen, and they have the clean 15, the ones you're more likely to have less of the toxins, the chemicals and different things in them. So there's lots of things people could do without spending a nickel to improve, their lives. Can I tell you another quick story?
Yes, please do. And on that note, I'll absolutely love that website, and there's so much valuable information there. And I'm going to put in the show notes because you can go through a can of worms when you go on that website, and you just be mind blown, like, oh my gosh, is this what I'm being exposed to? Heavy metals and so forth. But yes, please share your story.
I have so many, but we're talking about the Environmental Working Group and getting off these things, and I had a young man who was on my football team. I coached football for 15 years while I was doing all this stuff, and I had a great when my son was a tremendous athlete, and that actually helped get me into the business because I cared about him and being at his peak performance, and so that's what took me into the wellness field in the first place. That and the environmental, sidestep environmental law that I did prior. So I had a kid on the football team whose mom came up to me. Now, anyone who coaches out there, you'll identify with this. Mom comes up to you at practice and says, hey, call him Johnny. Johnny, if he doesn't practice, can he still play in the game on Saturday? And of course, as a coach, I go, well, no way, you can't skip practice and still play in the game on Saturday. Why? Why doesn't he want to come to practice? Well, he was very embarrassed because of his asthma inhaler, and it would the kids would laugh at him if he used it. And I don't know why it would make a difference on Saturday, but I said, no, he has to practice or he can't play Saturdays. But why? And she told me about the asthma inhaler. I said, well, have you ever done any testing to see if there's something? And sure enough, we ran environmental pollutants panel, which is for all sorts of things in the environment, and a food sensitivities test, of course. I would never leave that out. And again, just did a few minor tweaks. This kid never had another asthma attack. And he became a star player on our team and went on. I taught youth, I'm talking like 12, 13, these kids were that I coached. I find that to be the most fun age. I've coached high school and I didn't like it. But anyway, he went on to be a really good high school athlete. And every time I saw his parents down at the grocery store or the gas station in town, they would, come up and thank me again for helping Johnny with his asthma. So it's not just ADD, or it's our overall thinking and approach to wellness and optimize, identifying those obstacles to healing. It's really important.
For the audience to get a better picture with this case in particular, with the asthma one, was it heavy metals? Was it the gut for this individual? I know every individual might be different. Was it food sensitivities? What was the key? I know you said there's not a key player, but what was the combination of things that resulted in this?
I would say foods loomed very large again, but this is where you can't be sure. Like if you just run one test, you're guessing.
Yes.
Maybe, let's hope. Well, that's how the rest of them do it. Let's hope. No, reasonable expectations are better than hope. So I don't want to give you hope. I want to give you reasonable expectations that if you do enough of the investigative work, you will find healing opportunities. And together we can, depending on what they are, creatively overcome those things you need to change or do differently or whatever it is. That's where the term health coaching comes in. So we're of course in functional lab work and all natural protocols, and that's the easy part. Believe it or not, it's easy to run labs and figure out what's wrong, but getting the person to take responsibility and to do the behaviors is the true challenge. This is why health coaching has come to the forefront. Is such a fast-growing profession, and it is a profession. It's not for amateurs. If you're going to take on clients who are sick or ill or not well and try to change them to well, it's going to require some professional assistance in behavior, and that's what I find another fascinating thing about our field.
Yeah. I've got a question for you, Reed. I love that you shared these stories with us with, ADD, ADHD, asthma, and there's so many more, like you mentioned, skin conditions, hormones, and so forth. So if an individual has all these, has had a chronic illness for a number of years and they don't know what's happening, and then I guess the first thing that pops into their mind is, I have to go and spend more money now on more tests, because 5 tests come up to how much ever, maybe even in thousands of dollars. What would you say, like, for individuals who are so stressed out about their health and they kind of just want answers, but they're kind of like, do I run these tests? Do I not? Like, what would you tell them?
It depends on their the underlying reason for their objection. Some people just don't have the money. Others have it, but they just don't want to spend it because they don't trust the process. And I'm not sure which one's worse, but it's an investment. So it's an investment. If you don't have the money, you can go get it. You can do something to get some extra money and run these labs. And, we have our fees for this service as well. And, the investment is a barrier for many, many people. There just simply isn't a lot of shortcuts, although I've trained over 4,000 people, and every one of them tries to shortcut. Every one of them tries to save their client money. Well, and they run up against mistakes that I learned a long time ago. Just run the labs because they think, well, I think it's this, so let's just run that one test. And guess what? They might even find a little something, but it's not comprehensive enough. You're not connecting any dots. You're not really giving that person a proven way. Um, but they keep trying, and so yeah, the labs are an investment. If I wouldn't take on a client that wouldn't run them. It's just how I work. I'll tell you this. Years ago, I felt I had inhibitions about asking people to spend money on labs, and I would sort of do two labs, and then we'd consult, and it would make so much sense. Remember, we start with the catabolic, anabolic, and the immune system, and just run a couple labs, and then it's like, okay, good, we got this much data, and we can sort of start to change things in your lifestyle a little bit. Most people do that and they sell a lot of supplements, which doesn't work either. But then I would say, well, now we need to run a couple more. Let's just look here and let's just look here. And then one more, at the end, five labs. And believe me, I've had people back in the day, I was running 10 labs on people because I was still sorting out which ones were the most key and critical. So I had people run 10, 12 labs back in the day. And I boiled it down to these five, the best initial comprehensive onboarding and investigation. So even then, I was still doling them out, so to speak. And a couple clients actually just got mad at me and says, hey, Reed, every time I come and see you, you run another test. Why didn't you just run them all at once? And I said, well, I wasn't sure you'd spend the money. I was like, it was my own money mindset that was holding me back from doing my best work. And so I got over the money issue personally. I spend it like a drunken sailor anyway. But, I got people to run the five labs, and those were the ones that got the best results because we had the whole big picture. And then I could recommend. Now we didn't talk about it much, but the protocol is all natural, drug free, client controlled. Client. It just puts you in the driver's seat, and that's DRESS, stands for diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. So that's the true magic. Like what I do is called FDN, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. That's just the name I gave it. But it's all about searching for the hidden HIDD stressors and dysfunctions, some of which are very far upstream, having interaction with each other. But that's okay. We got our arms around all that. The DRESS is what gets customized for each individual that they have to sort of go home and do. And that's, again, where the health coaching comes in. But that DRESS, that's the real magic. Eating right, making sure you're resting properly, and understanding what that means. And exercise goes without saying, but exercising right for you. I can't do at 71 what I did at 20. It just hurts too much. So,
No, I love that DRSS. And I feel like there has to be an A added into it, which is accountability. And I think, once an individual takes the accountability for their own health, they're able to jump into the driver's seat with the plan that you provide to them and guide it and move it forward. And I love that you said, I used to do only one test, two tests because of, our own money mindset. But essentially, if you want to get the best out of the person that's sitting in front of you, you kind of have to work with them and offer them the best available option, which in this instance is running the tests to figure out what is happening. So then you're able to personalize their plan specific to them, which I think is so important, that personalization aspect.
It's just all individual, isn't it? It's everybody comes and they're dealing with their stuff, and um, not only, and you might say, well, there's common threads. Yes, there is, of course. It's all stress related. It's all stress related, but it affects everyone so differently.
Yes.
Um, that's what needs to be. That's why we call it metabolic chaos, and we have a system of sorting it out. The same stressors can have totally different effects depending on who the person is. So that's why we also don't. This is a really important consideration and phrase that we use. We don't treat the test results. It's the person who produced those test results. Just like the symptoms aren't the problem. The symptoms are the result of the problem. And so are the test results. They're not the problem. You can't just give them something and change the numbers on the paper. What produced those test results? That's what the problem is. And so it's not much of a stretch. Most people understand it. You really think about it. Um, it's a little more disciplined than other methodologies. People want, they could say, "Tell me what to take. Tell me what to take." And I joke around. I said, "Well, take your wife out to dinner, or or take a walk, or take a look in the mirror or something." We can't just sell you supplements and you think that's gonna supplement your way out of the things you really need to do,
Yeah,
like eat
100%.
right and go to bed on time and all the things.
100%. Reed, tell me a little bit about the book you wrote, The Gap. What is The Gap?
Yeah, it's one of four books actually that I
Yeah.
contributed to.
Okay.
My solo book is still in the works, he says,
Amazing.
after 10 years.
Amazing. That's good.
That's
I'm
right.
excited. What are we looking at this year, next year? What is it
Yes,
about?
yes, yes, yes. No, but I contributed to a number of books, a
Okay.
chapter or other contributions. And I talk about hidden and I talk about dress as part of an overall um, uh, concept of self-reliance.
Yeah.
So some people are more experts in the mental emotional aspects of health and wellness. Some people are better at one part than another. I'm the guy with the best 30,000-foot view of everything, looking at the hormone, looking at the things I can measure, because I believe in the science behind that. Like what I can measure, I can change or help a person change. So mine
100%.
is a yeah, and but I love working with others who are sort of into the nitty gritty of past trauma and different things. I personally have seen what I call psycho-spiritual stress, which is not having a purpose in life. And I've had to tell
Mm.
people just this week, uh, a doctor I'm friends with told me he was down and blah blah. So man, get a purpose in your life. What makes you get up in the morning? Well, I go, well, pick something. Like you have to have a purpose, or you're going to be. That's part of the metabolic chaos. Now, so is other mental, emotional aspects, your relationships and your finances, and you hate your job or driving through traffic or whatever it is. That's that's bad too. And there's people that probably know more about that than I do. I'm sure there is, but I know it's there, and so we try to cover it all under stress reduction. Getting rid of the chemicals and um, stinking thinking. You know,
No, I love that you shared that with us, Reed, and it's so important to have a purpose. I think I remember talking to a nurse who was in the cancer field, and I asked her, I said, what to you makes someone survive longer than the individuals that don't? Because you've been working in this for 10, 20 years. And she said to me, Mahela, it's individuals that have a purpose. It's the people who have tomatoes growing in the backyard and they have to go back and water them. Or it's those people who have grandkids. Or it's those people that are writing a book. Or it's something that's pushing them to have a purpose to keep going, which was so interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned tomatoes in the backyard because that's, in my bio you read that I do gardening, and actually it's landscaping and gardening. Um, I like moving big rocks, and I have a tractor and property, and it's really big league sometimes. But my tomatoes are one of my favorite things.
I love that. They're going off here at the moment in Australia, which was so amazing and so yum. I love tomato season.
In California, you can grow them 12 months.
Wow.
Huge bushes, and they never quit producing. They just produce all the time. It's just a matter of just going and getting the ripe ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
amazing. Do you have a
I'm,
favorite type?
I like the little ones. I don't know the
Okay.
real name for them, but they're not cherry tomatoes. They're a little bit bigger, but they're just sweet as honey. They're
Yeah.
You just go down and grab it and rub it on your shirt and pop it in your mouth. Yeah, just we don't use any chemicals or anything like that.
And so many health benefits. We can keep going on and about it. But yeah, I like the black Russian ones. They're so juicy and they're
Oh
just
yeah,
so yum. And like putting them in sandwiches or in a salad and with basil. Oh, go on. Yes, yum, yum, yum.
that a species, is that a variety of tomato that you can buy locally there that's popular or
Well, you can buy it at the shelf, but I don't think it's that popular. I think it's more of a European one. I'm
okay?
actually going to look it up and let you know. But yeah, I love them. They're just juicy and yummy. But Reed, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. And you said, I don't give hope to people, but I'm pretty sure individuals now are able to get a clearer picture of what they can do and have options to get healthy and be in homeostasis and have a purpose and understand that, there is something, just because the doctor said, or whoever they're working with, your blood tests are fine, and they're feeling symptoms, there must be something else, and they have the option to dig deeper. I think that's what you've provided us today with, is there is an option to dig deeper if you want to, and there's people out there like yourself, like your students, other practitioners who do functional testings that are able to do these tests and kind of figure out what is happening overall in your body. So I really appreciate you putting all that together for us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And do you have anything that you want to share with the audience today? I know you shared a lot, but is there anything else that you want to share with them today?
I would love to. There's a URL they could put into their computer. It's, what we do is called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, or FDN. We're known affectionately around the world as FDN. So there's fdntraining.com after you. So RHEUZ. And you can put that in your show notes if they don't know how to spell it, I guess.
Oh, well, I'll put that in my show notes. Thank you so much, Reed. I'll put all those notes in the show notes and information about the course and so forth. But thank you for joining us on Natural Podcast. And remember that you're pure love, capable of living life to its fullest expression.
My pleasure.
Information provided here is opinion of Mahela Ragoose and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Ragoose does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, Mahela Ragoose, any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Ragoose be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements,
diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mihaela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.